Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's virtual kickoff for the Women's Sports Club. We're just going to give it another 60 seconds as we see a bunch of folks joining. Make sure to say hi in true Women's Sports Club fashion. We got the chat open. We'll have the Q&A open. So feel free to introduce yourself, give what you're up to a shout out, and we'll get started in just a minute or two. Hopefully everyone's got some lunch, or if you're on the West Coast, got some breakfast. Kim, you've already got a question. We haven't even started. But yes, we want you to raise your hand, maybe plop your question in the Q&A panel for right now, but we will get to some live questions as well in a little bit. Awesome. Oh, I see so many great familiar faces and our attendees. So good to see everybody. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Gina Waldhorn. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Sports Innovation Lab. And welcome to the Women's Sports Club 2024 virtual kickoff event. We've got a lot of good information packed into a full agenda for the next kind of 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have some open chat. But before I kind of dive into the nitty-gritty of everything we're going to be going over about the club and what you can expect this year, I want to turn it over to Sports Innovation Lab co-founder and chair, four-time Olympian, former IOC member, ceiling shatterer, record breaker, Angela Ruggiero, to say a few words for us. Hey, Ange.
Thanks, Gina. As always, it's awesome to be here. Really excited to kick off the second year of Sports Innovation Lab's Women's Sports Club. So glad you can all join us virtually. We had a great kickoff last week at Meta's headquarters in New York City. Have a lot planned this year, building off of the momentum of last year. Just, again, incredibly excited about what we're doing at Sports Innovation Lab, and specifically the Women's Sports Club, driving more deals, more visibility, more connections, just really being at the epicenter of change for the women's sports industry. So proud of the work that we've done in terms of the FAM project and bringing a lot of data to the conversation, which I think really has changed the conversation in terms of business opportunities. But this club is meant to get everyone involved. Well, of course, Gina will get into the details of how we want to support you, but the club is only as good as its members. So again, the goal today for me is to make sure everyone knows the resources that are at your fingertips so you can take full advantage of the club. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being a part of it. You continue to be a part of it. We can't wait to see you live on our next event, and excited at the partners that we've been able to bring in, and including Sarah at Trailblazing and all the new partners that we have that are going to be really actively helping to grow what we kicked off last year with Ally. So I'll turn it back to Gina, our kick-ass CMO, who is going to just lead the way for us as usual and tell everyone what to expect this year with the Women's Sports Club.
Thanks, Ange. And you'll also see kind of on your right side in terms of your team leading you through today. You've got Angela, you've got myself. The H and the P are Hallie and Peyton from Sports Innovation Lab. I know a lot of you know them. Lots of emails behind the scenes doing all the operations for all things club. And then Sarah Gottfredson, who's key to a lot of the operations, founder of Trailblazing Sports Group, who you'll hear from in a little bit. So let's dive in. First of all, huge shout out. This is the virtual kickoff. We had an incredible in-person kickoff for those who could join us in New York last week. Huge shout out to Meta. Thank you so much for hosting us at your beautiful office space. It was just an amazing opportunity to get IRL with all of our different members, hear from you what's working, see the live introductions and networking and deal making taking place. It was just electric. So little snapshot of, you know, what we got up to over at Meta last week, but you're going to see a lot of the same content that they were able to see in person. And then we'll also be sending out today's recording. So you have all the materials from today's kickoff call with you as well. So today we're going to recap our club mission. We're going to talk about what's actually and who are powering this club, which is really exciting news. We're going to make sure you understand the benefits of being a member and what you can take out of the women's sports club. We're going to briefly touch on what we did last year so that we can use it to inform what we're planning for this year, and more importantly, get some of your feedback on what we're planning for the year to come. And then we'll end with a few minutes of open discussion. I see that our chat is disabled. I think that's a Zoom webinar function to avoid, I don't know, trolls or things. So apologies for that. We'll try to get that open next time, but love what you already did. Use the Q&A. Tell us who you are, ask questions. Feel free to use that as a little area to chat as well. And we're also going to have a few interactive polls today because I want to hear from you who you are and what you want to get out of the club. So get ready to participate in some of those as well. So really quickly, a recap. I think it's important to start by stating why we started the club, which is to increase the dollars spent on women's sports, media, and sponsorship. And the club exists to really focus not on the hearts, on the right thing to do, but on the minds and the wallets, and showcase the business potential of women's sports, and to create a networking group that connects the buy with the sell, and to always utilize the power of data. That's why Sports Innovation Lab is the one hosting this club, because everything we do starts with the data and the business case for investing in women's sports, and do all of that with the focus on accelerating the commercial investment, the dollars spent on one of the most undervalued entertainment assets in the world, which is women's sports. So that's why we started this club. That's why we think you're here today. And we would not be able to have the club without our Powered by partners. We started last year with the trust and the support and the partnership of our dear friends at Ally Financial, who have made the commitment in the 50-50 pledge, and really were the first brand on board to say, let's power this women's sports club and create this community. And we're thrilled to announce we now have a select set of incredible blue chip brands standing alongside Ally to power the club in 2024. EA Sports, Google, Morgan Stanley Sports and Entertainment, Scripps Sports, and the Trailblazing Sports Group. We've got another couple of brands we're going to be announcing soon. These brands are active members of the club. They're providing feedback and direction. They're supporting the club. And we want you to get involved with these brands as well. So huge shout out and thank you to our Powered by partners. You'll be hearing from them. You'll be seeing more of them throughout this year. And of course, always thankful to Ally for kicking us off last year and helping to really continue to hold the torch as we plow ahead on an even better year than last year. So huge shout out and thank you to our Powered by partners. And now we want to talk a little bit about the benefits that you can expect to get out of the club as a member and where we're headed in 2024. We think you will have, we want to measure success by how successful you feel your membership has been in the women's sports club. And success looks like at the end of the year, you've bought or sold something with another member of the club. You generated some new hot leads or prospects or partners. You improved your pitch. And that could be because you're on the sales side of media and inventory and sponsorship, and the data and the narratives that you were able to take away improved your sell. Or you might be on the buy side. You might be a brand or an agency partner, and you're looking to create more internal merchandising to get a budget, to prove out a women's sports strategy, to convince your client to spend on women's sports, to convince your board to spend on women's sports. So think of us as a resource to help you craft those pitches and come to us with the business, the data, whatever you need. And we'll think you'll be successful if we help you improve that pitch. We, of course, want you to walk away with new data, and we want you to build a truly meaningful network, a network with intention where you can see the value of the other members and what you can each get out of each other. And the way that we're going to make that happen is by building a curated membership base. And we think we've done a great job of that already. So you have over 300 women's sports club members in your network. We are working on an updated directory, which we will issue to you soon. And it spans the gamut of C-suite, founders, presidents, investors, ecosystem partners, media supervisors. You've got to have all the different constituents from the buy and the sell, from the commercial departments, in order to create the right type of networking group. And we feel very proud that that's what we've built, and that's what we're going to continue to build as we have more folks join in the club every week. Here's a selection of the companies who are members. Some of you on today's call, tons of you were in person with us last week. Again, we will send out a directory so you can see who from each of these companies is the kind of key women's sports club member, because we want you to build personal relationships. But these are just an incredible group of, again, representation from across the buy, the sell, the impact ecosystem, the properties, the brands, the sponsors of women's sports, who are all active members of the Women's Sports Club today. And like I said, it's important that we have both the brands and the sponsors, the properties and the agencies, the investors. So I'm going to take a moment right now, and I'm actually going to launch a poll. Would love to hear from you where you fit into this ecosystem. So I've just launched a poll asking what best describes your role, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you sell to sports properties. Let us know what role you play. It's very useful for us to understand and continue to balance who the members are, so we're not too heavy on the buy or the sell or the ecosystem. Awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh yeah, coming in. Need a couple more folks who work with athletes in there. We got the media. Awesome. Couple more, taking the poll. Excellent. Thank you guys for taking these polls. I'll give you a quick share of the results. So you can see we've got about 30% are doing some kind of sell, 15% are doing some kind of buy. A handful are working with athletes, a couple folks from media. So again, always really important for us to monitor this and make sure we balance the whole membership with the right representation from across the ecosystem. All right, we'll launch another poll in a couple minutes. So a key part of your membership are our in-person events. It's where we really try to curate conversations, thought leadership, and introductions to focus on real buy opportunities in media and sponsorship. So the networking's great, the learning's great, the data's great. We want to make sure that's there, but we also want to make sure that there's real opportunities to pitch and to buy. So last year we kicked off pretty much almost to the day, about a week earlier, at South by Southwest. We had an incredible turnout. We were so thrilled to see over 80 members show up. We hosted a panel. So it's also very important to us that we have our owned events at big events where, you know, we take over, it's our happy hour, it's our breakfast, it's our networking event. But we also think it's really important for the club and for women's sports to have representation on the main stage at some of these industry events where we're bringing the buy and the sell ecosystem and where they're already there. So we took the Sportico stage at South by Southwest with an amazing panel of executives, and then we had our own happy hour last year. We also did something very similar at the SBJ Brand Innovation Summit. For those of you who could join us, we had an incredible breakfast. We curated about 10 tables, each with a dedicated inventory opportunity, and then put select buyers and sellers across those different tables, while we also took the SBJ main stage with Andrea Brimmer from Ally. So fantastic turnout. Can't wait to recreate that again this year. It's important to show up at the big women's sports events. I mean, we wouldn't be a women's sports club if we didn't show up at All-Star and Championship. And so we're definitely thinking about which major tentpole women's sports events to show up again this year. So I want to hear from you. Which did you like? Which didn't you like? But it's important. We're at the industry events where the buyers and the sellers are, and we're at the sports events kind of showing showing off the product and making sure that we bring club members who maybe never came to a Final Four or a WNBA All-Star or a US Open or a WTA or a US Open of surfing. We want you to really see the inventory. So it's important for us to show up at these live sports events as well. And advertising week was a huge event for us last year. Very eager to come back to advertising week again this year. We took over both the official advertising week Great Minds stage with a fantastic panel with the WNBA CMO. We had Adobe. We had players from the WNBA. We just had a real fantastic cross section of the industry at both the Great Minds stage, official advertising week programming, and then live from the Microsoft Garage. Huge shout out to our members at Microsoft who hosted over 150 club members for a fantastic panel and networking breakfast. So we will definitely be back at advertising week this year. And we kicked off this year with our first event at Sports Pro. So here's a little snapshot of Angela, of Julie Haddon from the NWSL, of Molly Marcoux, the commissioner of the LPGA, all taking the stage at Sports Pro to talk about women's sports, to shout out to the club. So that was a fantastic kind of kickoff last week. And then the next morning, we paired that with our breakfast over at Meta. So again, it's really important. We're showing up at industry events where executives are already planning to be. We like to call it storming the castle because we make sure that women's sports has representation on the main stage in the agenda, but then we also carve out our own dedicated time, our own dedicated curated networking events to connect the buy and sell ecosystem outside of the kind of nonstop conference summit official agenda that's been planned. So that's going to be part of how we do it again in 2024. And we have a list of events that we're going to share with you. And we want to hear with you where you want us to show up, because when we do show up, we get a lot of press. So kudos to the team. Kudos to all of you who showed up. We plan on getting a lot more press this year as well. We had over 100 million impressions of the work that the club did, of the events that the club showed up to, of the deals that the club got done, on the partners that the club brought in. So we plan on making press and shouting to the rooftops about what the club is up to, a key pillar of how the club operates in 2024 again. So again, got something newsworthy, got someone you want to put on stage, you kind of let us know, and we're eager to work with all of our club members to contribute to the press that we achieve. And it's all about getting deals over the finish line, right? Press is nice, events are nice, networking is nice, but we want to see it end in deals. So here's a snapshot of some of the deals we were able to close last year, some of the inventory packages we were able to create. And our goal is to just keep racking that up and then telling the world that we're getting deals done. Because we want to see you sellers close deals. We want to see your buyers spend your money. So I mentioned big events calendar for the year. I'm going to go ahead and quickly launch another poll because we want to hear from you what kind of events you think are most important for us to show up at. So here we go. Events launch. All right. So here we are asking you, which events do you think it's most important for the club to show up at? So we only want you to pick one. If you had to pick, do we show up at the big women's sports events? Do we go storm the castle where maybe some of the folks who aren't spending yet, but are spending a lot of money in men's are? Should we be at F1 and Super Bowl? Do we need to be at those industry events? Or do we need to really crack the nut on the brand events where the agencies and the brands are? And yes, we're going to be at all of them, so don't worry. But, you know, the club, there's only so many days in the year, and we know executives only go to so many events, and we still have a limited budget. So we want to know really where you think we should show up and what are the most important kind of events. So tell us here, also email us afterwards. We also do a lot of surveys throughout the year. Please fill out those surveys. It's really important for us to get your feedback to shape how the club operates. So, all right, keep filling it out. Oh, man, pretty split. Brand events taking the cake at actually almost 50%. Let me share with you guys. So there we go, 46%. And that's a lot of what we hear. I would agree. And I think we've obviously all of our Powered by partners are going to be a lot of those events. So yes, we will continue to share our calendar. And what you're actually seeing on the screen right now, outside of the poll, is our tentative short list of events where the club is going to show up this year. So I will tell you about our May 2nd event shortly. But look out for us at Advertising Week. We might go back to the Brand Innovation Summit. We will have some constituents getting a little international for the first time. We were very US based this year, but we heard from a lot of our partners that it was important to do a little bit more internationally. So we might be at Cannes or Cannes, depending on where you're based and how you say it. We'll always support our partners at the W and NWSL. We had some great feedback from some of the folks who came in person that we should be at women's football and we should be at tennis events and surf events. So we're thinking about those. Big year with the Olympics, first 50-50 Olympics. How do we want to activate there? So here's a short list. Want your feedback. Want to hear if we're missing anything glaringly missing? Let us know. So May 2nd, what do we have planned? The first ever women's sports club New Front. If you are not familiar with the upfronts and the new fronts, they are the largest dedicated media buying events in the world, where it is estimated about over $12 billion will be committed to linear and digital media at 2024 upfronts and new fronts. So they're week-long events that take place in New York City, where all of the media buyers and brand buyers come to see what the publishers and the networks and the digital providers have planned for the year ahead, where they make large-scale commitments for discounted rates. This is not someplace that we have seen women's sports really show up in a big way. So we are thrilled to announce the first ever dedicated New Front to women's sports inventory. It's going to take place on May 2nd at Noya House in New York. We're going to have a creators breakfast and we're going to have a big show, which is going to be powered by the Trailblazing Marketplace, which I'm going to let Sarah talk about. But our goal is slam that room full of media buyers and bring women's sports inventory, media, sponsorship, docu-series, podcast, inventory that can be bought at scale for the first time and give women's sports a new stage that it has never really had the opportunity to shine on. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Gottfredson, founder and CEO of Trailblazing Sports Group, who's going to talk a little bit about trailblazing, how you can tap into trailblazing as a new partner of the clubs, and how they're going to be powering this new front. So Sarah?
Thanks, Gina. Oh, you gotta show the space.
All right, yeah, sorry. So this is where the new front's going to be hosted. Beautiful private club near Madison Square Park in New York City. Like I said, women's sports just deserves kind of premium, beautiful, elevated, front page, positioning at this new front, and we're giving it to it by showing up at the beautiful Noya House. So it's going to be an amazing event. If you buy media, you should be there. If you sell media, listen to what Sarah has to say, because you should be part of the marketplace and get your media on this stage. Now take it away.
All right, thanks, Gina. So as Gina mentioned, I started with a few partners, Trailblazing Sports Group, about 1.5 years ago. And really what we are endeavoring to do is to revolutionize brand investment in sports and really focus on women's sports as being that catalyst that is going to revolutionize how media planners, buyers, and brands invest in women's sports. So we have created the Trailblazing Marketplace, and we are endeavoring, if you flip to the next slide, it's going to solve for 3 things. So in women's sports, and a few of you on this that sell women's sports know that scale can be an issue sometimes, but we can overcome it. So we are going to be putting together partnerships which will amass scale. So you might have a small women's sports offering, but guess what? We know people that could amplify that offering in a linear way or in a larger digital way. So we can put that together and bring one package to the marketplace. Brands, clients, agencies have been doing this for over 20 years. They like simplicity. They like a single point of entry. They like to know that they can turn to a trusted partner. So we are going to be that. We are going to be the front door to doing deals in women's sports, and we are going to connect to all of you to implement, to help you negotiate, to help you sell those packages. And we also know that women's sports is really fractured. You know, people are out there doing team deals, they're doing league deals, they're doing media deals. There's some CSR involvement, and sometimes the right hand's not always talking to the left hand. So what we are endeavoring to do is to create a connected thread that will help your women's sports strategy just sing a little bit more. So we feel like this will be a great way to do that, with thinking about it holistically and one marketplace with one offering. So the next slide is just, this is, you know, the marketplace is pretty dynamic. There's 3 ways that you can participate in the marketplace. One, and this is really what's going to lead and what we're going to be doing in the new front, which is it's a collection of assets in women's sports. So we would love to help represent your assets in the new front and beyond to all of the brands and all of the media buyers that we have relationships with and that have had relationships with over the last 20 years. And so these could be single owned entities. If you come to us and say, we have this really great story, but we don't have a distribution partner, we can help you find that. So that's the partnership place there. We're also talking and partnering with a few entities to create a programmatic marketplace. So to make it really easy, and this is where the Sports Innovation Lab and their audiences will be a big anchor of this, but to really make it easy for brands that want to just reach fans of women's sports, to reach audiences who may be reading a women's sports story on, you know, glamour.com. So we want to find the places where people are engaging in women's sports, and we want to serve them the ads there. And then we are creating tentpoles, and these are really just integrated campaigns, really around big themes that we think are important to showcase in women's sports. So think about moms that are athletes. Think about mental health and what's happening in the collegiate space with female athletes there. So we're going to be creating these tentpoles in and around what we're doing in the new front, but really excited to launch the Trailblazing Marketplace at the new front. So if I could, Gina, I think that's all my slides, but just to give everybody some context to the new front and the 4 ways that we are going to package things up. So if you have specific opportunities in each of these 4 buckets, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sure my email is somewhere in the invite. The first way is we're calling it local impact, national reach. So if you represent a team or a regionalized event, grassroots, whatever, that would fall there. The second is female athletes as influencers. So if you represent athletes, or if you have an opportunity that has multiple athletes that you want to highlight, that's that bucket there. The third is storytelling and content. So think about all of, as Gina said, the doc series, the podcast series. That's the third bucket. And then the fourth is owning the moment. So if you are in the business of live sports, whether it's broadcasting the live games, whether it's highlight reels, those packages would fall in that tentpole. So the goal of the new front is to bring a number of packages that ladder up to at least $10 million. Which again, when you're in the business of working for a big media company like ESPN, you're talking billions. So why 10 million seems like a lot in women's sports, as Gina said in the beginning of the new front or the upfront slides, it's a fraction of what is transacted in these 2 weeks in May. And so we're going to go get it. And we're not going to sleep for the next month as we prepare for this, but we look forward to everybody being a part of it in the club.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And like, guys, look at this. This is the 4 days. This is the program for the new fronts. Little old Women's Sports Club, Sports Innovation Lab. This is going to say Women's Sports Club is up next. We kick off the day, and after us is Meta, and then Vivo, and then TikTok. Like, we look at the company the Women's Sports Club keeps. We are going to pack this beautiful room with media buyers and brands, and we're going to bring scale to the long tail of women's sports. So use the club, use Sarah, reach out to us. If you have something to sell, let us get it into the marketplace. Let us give it some stage time. Let us put it in front of the buying ecosystem so that we can come together and we can sell more women's sports media in this beautiful space. And if you're a buyer, agency partners, brands, we'll make sure to get you an invite to the event because it's going to be amazing. We're going to have some celebrities there. It's just going to be not to be missed. Okay, so for those of you who can't join us in person for any or all of our events, we're going to have a slew of virtual events. This is our first. We're going to do them quarterly. So we're having our kickoff right now. But we're also going to do some extra dedicated sessions, mainly grounded in the data and the resources and the research that you have at your fingertips as part of a women's sports club member. If you want to hear from guest speakers, if you want to focus on NIL, if you want to focus on co-ed sports, if there's things you believe, data, research, introductions, hearing from experts would help you reach those goals of developing your network, buying and selling, improving your pitch, let us know because we're in the process of creating the agendas for those virtual events for the rest of the year. The next one that we have coming up is going to be all about audiences and programmatic and data use to reach more women's sports fans, whether that's promoting your property or, trying to, if you're a sponsor, trying to reach more consumers. So we'll talk about that. But we want to hear from you again on what you would like us to talk about in these virtual sessions. We're going to continue to facilitate introductions. So like I said, this is just some of the introductions we made last year, over 75 kind of curated one-to-one introductions. Get a hold of that directory. Let us know who you want to meet. We heard from a lot of our brand members last year that they wanted to know how deals got done. So they saw so-and-so did a deal with so-and-so property and they said, how did they get that done? Or so-and-so sold something to so-and-so. We're creating a very kind of supportive environment here. Let us help make those introductions so you guys can get on the call together and ask how you did it. What worked? I got to know from them too. Why did you get to know? What would have to be true? So we loved making those intros. We love being part of those conversations. We want to continue to do that this year. So look out for that directory and, let us know. And we always make sure there's kind of dual opt-in. We won't just send kind of, blind intros. We make sure and preface to each side that both sides are comfortable with the introduction before we make it. Because we also don't want to just, bang down the door of every brand with 500 sales opportunities every 2 hours. And then look out for our newsletter. It is back with a vengeance this year. It is packed full of a lot of first to market buying opportunities, highlighting deals that have been done. It's meaty, but it's really good. If you have ideas or things you want to showcase, we always do a call for submissions at the beginning of the month. Continue to make sure if you're not getting this newsletter, let us know. We will re-opt you in. It is just chock full of good resources and highlights and deals. So it would not be a Sports Innovation Lab session, and I would not be on this call if I did not show up with some good data to drop on you. So we're going to spend another 3 minutes right now, and I'm going to share some new, fresh data on the growth of women's sports with you. The first thing we want to look at is more than double the fans are spending more than double the money when it comes to women's sports fans. So number one, we looked at the total fan base within our data set and found that the total number of women's sports fans, or as we sometimes abbreviate FOWS, fans of women's sports. And to be and qualify as a fan of women's sports, you had to have spent money on women's sports because we believe tune-in is important and going to games is important and things. But the most purest sign that someone is a fan is when they demonstrate it with their wallet. So the number of fans in Sports Innovation Lab's data set that spent money on women's sports, teams, leagues, properties, direct-to-consumer merchandise increased 143% since 2021. And the spend by those fans on women's sports. So how many tickets they were buying, how much merch they were spending on, increased more than 2 times, up 124%. So as inflation goes up and we see lots of other categories, spending goes down, spend on women's sports went up. The total purchases, so the number of transactions, it wasn't just that they were buying things that cost more, they made more transactions than 2021. And already in the beginning of this year, we see the spending by fans of women's sports outpace the previous 3 years at 207, an average of $271 spent by fans of women's sports on women's sports per fan in 2024. So that was a lot of data. But what it says is more fans became fans, they spent more, and they spent more often. And we're on pace for 2024 to continue breaking those records. So this is an asset with a strong growth trajectory where we want to see more investment. And more fans are coming to specific leagues. So we took a breakdown of NWSL, WNBA. We wanted to look at volleyball. We wanted to look at golf, right? There's a lot of data on the NWSL and WNBA because they've just been around the longest. So there's a lot more data, but we're seeing such an increase in fans from college to volleyball to youth sports. So again, we're seeing NWSL fan count up 3x from 2021, WNBA fan count up 2x from 2021, with the total spend on the W up 276% since 2021. And then volleyball, one of the fastest growing sports in America, that fan count is up 69% with their total spend up 90%. And LPGA, wanted to shout out here. Well, the fan count still up where most fans are kind of just, most leagues, traditional men's sports leagues are kind of teetering on an average. LPGA fan count is up by 13%. But here's the thing, the total spend by fans on the LPGA is up 76%. While the PGA was only up 22%. So we know it's not about ragging on men's sports, and we know it's not apples to apples. It's a different beast. We want to think about women's sports in a different way, but we know there's only one budget. So sometimes it doesn't hurt to show that the LPGA is doing really well, maybe a little bit better when it comes to total spend by fans versus the PGA. So shout out LPGA, shout out volleyball. And then when it comes to the value of the women's sports fan, we just looked at some key categories, especially for some of our Powered by partners, and found that fans of women's sports spent 18% more last year on the finance category than fans of men's sports. And they spent 9% more in 2023 on gaming than fans of men's sports. So even in a category where shout out EA Sports, who have done amazing things for women's sports in their new FC game, creating original women's skeletons, it is still a market dominated by men's sports when it comes to gaming. Fans of women's sports spent more on gaming than fans of men's sports. So when it comes to finding data that proves not just the growth of the trajectory of the fan community, but the value of the women's sports fans, we're just seeing it increase year over year. So the data does not lie, and the club is going to continue to find stats like this, provide our members with stats like this. So let us know what you want to see more of, where there might be data gaps, and how stuff like this can be useful as you craft your business cases and your pitches. So guys, we're kind of rounding out the end of today's virtual presentation. We did have a survey that we fielded, and I've launched another poll, and we asked all of those members who actually came last week in person what you want more of from the club this year. So we want to continue to get that feedback. So I'm going to launch a poll, our last poll of the day, to have you tell us what you want a little bit more of from the club. And if you put other, then you got to tell us what that other is, if it's something else. So you want us to bring the data, you want us to do more in person. What we heard from some of the folks who joined us last week was more networking, just the value of the different constituents that they're meeting in the club has been proven tremendously valuable. So more opportunity to get introductions and get in person with these folks is important. The data and the resource sharing is critical. And getting some first access. So that idea that the club will provide early access, exclusive access, things that you get or get to feedback on before they hit the market was really important. And then showcasing and providing a platform and a space to just create and celebrate the stories of the wins, of the overcoming adversity of some of the athletes, and just what a lot of us in the club have achieved. It's great to celebrate that and find new outlets for that. So looks like same thing that was number one from those of us in person is number one for those of us on today's meeting, which is introductions to other members, mainly virtually, since we know everyone's working remote and it's hard to all get into the same place. So just really quickly sharing those results, the introductions to other members being number one. So we will take that feedback. We will continue to ask for more of that feedback. And we want to make sure you have access to all of those research. So with that, that's what we've got for you today. Want to open it up to the Q&A right now. We've got a few minutes left. Similar data for other categories, telecom, P&G, absolutely. So one thing that we're going to do, we do every year, is launch our fan project report. So starting in 2021, we released the fan project, which was really dedicated to unlocking the business potential of women's sports through the use of data. We launched the growth of the women's sports community in 2022, and we launched the ROI of the women's sports community in 2023. In 2024, we will launch another research report packed full of data, and we'll look for the club. We always give the club first access to that report. We like to get feedback on that report. So if you have data that you can contribute, if you have case studies you can contribute, we will, as we get closer to the writing of that report later in the year, we'll do some dedicated sessions focused on that report and how you can get involved. But yeah, showing the value across some of the big categories, I think that have not leaned in as much as we want them to or they're planning on, would be fantastic. Thinking about, again, QSR and auto and travel. And we have some amazing, you know, CarMax and Hyundai and Toyota have done great things for women's sports, but we want all of them. So good feedback. Anything else that anyone wants to ask or feedback on? You can also always email Hallie, Peyton, myself, Sarah, Gina at sportsilab.com with your feedback. Oh, I love that idea. So Nicole asked, is there the potential of chapters, kind of localized groups for the women's sports club being created? Maybe, yeah, I think we're definitely reaching the scale whereby we might do something like that. And it would also be great to partner with some of the organizations that already have some chapters, like the WISE and the WIST, and see how we can collaborate with them. They've been great partners to us as well, but I think that's a great answer. And let us know what other markets we need to get to. You know, there might be some underserved or overlooked markets where there's enough of a concentration of the buy and the sell and the brands and the properties that we should, you know, make sure we plant a flag and do something live. Any other last questions? Sarah, any questions you've got for the group, or Ange, before we, like I said, we'll be sharing this recording. So feel free, and we'll share the slides as well, so you can get a hold of those data points as well. Awesome. Well, right up at 1:45. We were hoping this would be about 45 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Look out for the confirmed schedule of our events for 2024, where we're going to be showing up at. Like I said, May 2nd is the New Front. May 9th is the Advertising Week Brand Play Sports Marketing Summit. So those are our kind of next upcoming events. And if you're going to be anywhere and you want to bring the club and you think we should show up, let us know. Look out for the recap of this virtual summit, as well as our in-person kickoff event with these slides and this recording. Thank you so much for being members, for all your contributions, and we can't wait to achieve this important mission together with all of you. Thanks, Ange. Thanks, Sarah. We'll see you guys soon.